Attorney General Rob Bonta. Great to see you, sir. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great, and I'm honored to be here with you.
Honored to be here with you. So I guess let's just jump right to it because I know your time is tight and you are dealing with a lot right now. But if you can tell us, I just saw the New York Times reporting just a short while ago, California officials asking a federal court for an emergency order that would restrict the federal government's use of Marines and National Guard troops in the LA area, limiting them only to protecting federal property. What can you tell us about that? It sounds as though, to some extent, the toothpaste is out of the tube. The forces are there, but I guess what you're trying to do is perhaps limit the scope of what they can do.
The forces are still being moved towards LA
Hmm.
and being fully deployed. 4,000 National Guards people have been deployed to LA, but only 300 have been on the street, if you will. They're actually not on a street. They're protecting a federal building, and 700 Marines who we are not yet aware that they are actually on the ground yet. So
Okay.
there is, even if they were all there, an order invalidating the president's executive order would still be helpful in rendering it invalid. But there's still time, of course, to make a difference with this order. We've asked for the court to issue a temporary restraining order, a TRO. It means that it's an order that can be issued swiftly because of the urgent need of this situation and the dire need in this situation. It will also, by definition, be short in duration as the court further considers what more permanent orders it wishes to issue. So we have a hearing on Thursday of this week at 1:30 p.m. where the court will hear from the federal government, hear from us, and make a decision. We believe the decision will be to grant our temporary restraining order because what the president has done here is unlawful. He has no authority to deploy the National Guard under the current circumstances. There needs to be an invasion. There is not.
Right.
There needs to be a rebellion. There is not. There needs to be the inability to execute the laws of the United States using the regular forces. That doesn't exist either. He also needs to have conferred with and gotten the cooperation of the governor, who, of course, strenuously objects to the deployment of the National Guard. So on the National Guard side, we think we have really strong arguments. On the Marine side, it's a little bit of a different analysis, but the core of the analysis is can the military be on American soil enforcing civilian laws? And it's answered by the Posse Comitatus Act, which
Right.
since the late 1800s, and it says that you can't. And so we believe that there could be a restriction on what the Marines can do in LA consistent with the Posse Comitatus Act. So we're looking forward to that hearing on Thursday. We think we have the best of the argument, the facts, and the law, and we're hopeful for a important and prevailing court decision.
Yeah, and Mr. Attorney General, and forgive me for asking hypotheticals, but when we're talking about Donald Trump, I guess hypotheticals do occasionally come to mind. I suppose one of the questions might be if a court comes down and says, Attorney General, you're absolutely right. What the state of California is absolutely valid and correct. President Trump, you need to get these forces out of there. They were not properly deployed and so on. And he says no. I guess, what do you do at that point, I guess, is the question I have.
Yeah, and this is sort of the constitutional crisis question. And there are steps to take along the way if that happens. We can move to enforce our order, go to the court, and they can issue an order that clarifies the scope and the scale and clarifies exactly what needs to be done. We could also hold Pete Hegseth or other department heads who are making orders here in contempt of court for failing to follow a court order. Civil contempt is when you're put in jail. And you have the keys to the jailhouse door in the sense that you can walk out anytime, just comply with the court order. If you don't comply with the court order, you stay in jail. If you comply with the court order, you walk out of jail. It's not criminal. It's not a punishment. Until a member of the federal government is held in contempt for violating a court order, I don't think we're at a constitutional crisis yet. There's also criminal contempt, which applies to department heads and agency heads. Of course, there's presidential immunity for the president, but it does apply to others. So there's a ratcheting up, a set of progressive steps to take if we get to a point where an order is issued by the court, say on Thursday, and the president refuses to comply.
And I guess your sense of things, you're in California. What's your viewpoint on where the protesters have been in terms of crossing the line? Um, is it the case that California officials are saying that they have not? I mean, that's what I've been reading. They have not crossed that line to the point where you would need the National Guard and where you would need the Marines to come in. I suppose your sense of it is that that line has not been crossed. We're seeing, protests. We're seeing people take to the streets and so on. Occasionally, a few bad apples cause some problems, do some vandalism and so on, but not to the extent that it would cause that kind of federal military response.
We're nowhere close to the line. It certainly has not been crossed. We have the largest sheriff's department in the entire nation in the LA Sheriff's Department, the third largest police department in the entire nation in the LA Police Department. They are well resourced, highly trained. They have lots of law enforcement officers. They were able to address all of the issues that need to be addressed with their own internal resources by the time the National Guard first arrived in LA, and the National Guard arrived and was met with quiet streets. And there's a whole mutual aid protocol where if additional resources are needed beyond LA sheriffs and LA police, they can call neighboring sheriffs, neighboring police departments. And then if necessary, after that, after all of the mutual aid is depleted, they can call in the National Guard through the governor, who is the commander in chief, not the president, who does not have control or is not the commander in this situation. I want to just distinguish between sort of two groups that we're seeing on
Yeah.
the street. One, there's peaceful protesters exercising the most fundamental right of Americans to speak out and speak up, to freely associate and speak freely, including being critical of their government because they want more justice. And this is a government of, for, and by the people. And unfortunately, whenever you see peaceful protests in large numbers, as we're seeing in LA, there are sometimes those who want to agitate, who see this as an opportunity to do unlawful things under cover of the larger groups and the bigger crowds. And so we have seen that happening: vandalism, graffiti, destruction of property. Some violence directed towards law enforcement agents. And those folks are wrong. They're breaking the law. They need to be held accountable. They should be arrested and prosecuted appropriately with their unlawful conduct, and they should be removed from the situation. The peaceful protesters should continue to be able to lift their voice up and lawfully, safely, and peacefully express their views.
And the Attorney General, when the president says that L.A. is being invaded, that there's an invasion going on, your response to that?
The president recently said, "I am not a lawyer," and that is painfully obvious. The terms that he uses, that he just uses them, gives them his own definition that's convenient to him, and applies it to a situation. He calls things emergencies that are not emergencies. He calls things invasions that are not invasions. He calls things insurrections or rebellions that are not insurrections or rebellions. He does it because he knows those are the trigger words in some statutes that give him what he really wants: more authority, more power. But you can't get the additional authority or the additional power if the requisite conditions on the ground don't exist. If there's no rebellion, you don't get the power. If there's no
Yeah.
insurrection, you don't get the power. So he's
Well, and
calling them that because he wants the power, but they don't exist, and he can't make them exist just by calling them something they're not.
yeah, he was saying this earlier today that these are paid insurrectionists and so on. Where does he get the evidence that they're paid insurrectionists? I don't know what that means, but this was my surmising yesterday, is that he's using the language, he's using words like insurrectionist because he wants to set the groundwork or lay the groundwork to use the Insurrection Act. If in fact we get to that point, what happens on your end? What do you do at that point?
Yeah, the president, as we've seen many times, is high on claims, short on evidence. He doesn't bring the receipts or the proof. He just gives the sales pitch, makes the claim. And so that's why courts are so important. They're places where the facts matter. The facts are relied on. The law is applied faithfully to the facts. And that's where we win, because his salesmanship, I'm sorry I have to say it, his lies, his hypocrisy, they don't fly in court. And so if he says something is an insurrection, just because he says it doesn't make it true. They're going to have to prove it up in court, and they will not be able to, because there is nothing close to an insurrection. And the time that there was an insurrection on January 6th, he refused to call in the National Guard. So the hypocrisy is thick and unfortunate, tragic, really. But he will not be able to prove an insurrection just by calling something an insurrection that is not one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like not a bad point to make in court. Yeah, not that I'm a lawyer or anything, and I don't play one on TV, but it seems to me there's some major hypocrisy there. Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. Appreciate the time. I know you're stretched thin, and working overtime these days, but really appreciate the time and taking the time to join us. Thank you so much.
I'm deeply honored to be with you. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Great to see you, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. You as well. That's the Attorney General Rob Bonta. And, we try to get the newsmakers on here and give everybody a sense as to what is happening out there, because right now we are reaching a crisis, and it is a self-made crisis created wholly by the President of the United States, by Donald Trump. And, he is doing things, he is taking this country to places that I guess a lot of us who are watching this didn't think we would ever arrive at. And, a lot of folks are using words like coup, using words like autocrat, authoritarianism. I think all of those words apply and may apply in the coming days. And we have to, one of the points I was going to make with Jorge Ramos earlier on in this program is that when free speech is threatened, the answer in my book is more free speech. When free speech is threatened in America, the necessary response is more free speech. Take it to the streets. Go out there, protest peacefully, make your voice heard. Tell this government that what they are doing is not just unlawful, it is unconstitutional, and it is un-American. It is un-American to sic the United States military on your fellow Americans. It is un-American. If this story can be verified and reported out further from our friend Jorge Ramos, that young woman that we heard from earlier on in this program, pregnant woman, says she was roughed up by federal authorities when she was trying to protest one of the ICE raids in California. Many of you were making your voice heard on this program and saying that you wanted to see that clip put out there. We will do that just as soon as this program is over. I will make sure that I get that clip out so everybody can see it later on this evening. Absolutely outrageous. It should not be happening in this country. A U.S. citizen, pregnant woman, roughed up by the authorities simply because she wanted to make her voice heard, simply because she wanted to say that these ICE raids are unjust, that these ICE raids are going too far, that these ICE raids are inhumane. Americans ought to be able to make those kinds of comments, ought to be able to make that kind of protest heard by the authorities. It's absolutely their American right to do so. And I appreciate Jorge Ramos for bringing that woman's story to us. It was absolutely excellent reporting on Jorge's part. But of course, that is Jorge Ramos. That is why I said at the onset of this show that Jorge Ramos is a legend. I'm very sad to report at the end of this program, I'm seeing from multiple news outlets, it sounds as though the ABC News correspondent Terry Moran has been let go from the network. The Hollywood Reporter is reporting this. Let me just take a quick sip of water here. I've been going about an hour now. Forgive me. Hollywood Reporter is saying that the decision comes to. I took too big of a gulp. Excuse me. Anyway, the Hollywood Reporter is reporting that this decision comes 2 days after ABC suspended Moran over a post on X about White House senior advisor Stephen Miller. In that post, which Terry Moran later deleted, he referred to Stephen Miller as a world-class hater. This is the statement from ABC News about Terry Moran. Excuse me, folks. I'm very sorry about that. We're at the end of our agreement with Terry Moran, and based on his recent post, which was a clear violation of ABC News policies, we have made the decision not to renew. At ABC News, we hold all of our reporters to the highest standards of objectivity, fairness, and professionalism, and we remain committed to delivering straightforward, trusted journalism. So I'm very sorry to hear this about Terry. I don't know Terry well. He and I have worked around each other for many years over at the White House and around Washington. Very solid reporter, very respected reporter here in Washington. And I'm very sorry to hear this news from ABC being reported by the Hollywood Reporter. We'll have to continue to follow that, see how it plays out in the coming days. But Terry Uh, Over here in independent media, the water is just fine. If you feel like taking the plunge in independent media, I'm sure you'll find that you'll have a pretty good audience once you make that decision. But in the meantime, I've got to go take care of this voice because I don't know what's happening here. This typically does not happen. I think I took too big of a gulp of water there at the end of this program. But yes, the news coming in just at the end of this program that Terry Moran, the correspondent over at ABC News, has been let go by the network. That's according to the Hollywood Reporter after he put that post out about Stephen Miller, which, by the way, we should say, that those were Terry's words. I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to figure out where he got that wrong. What was he wrong about? Somebody draw me a picture and explain to me how Stephen Miller is not a world class hater because what everything we've heard from him, everything we've seen from him over the last 10 years as he's been at Trump's side, he has basically exhibited that behavior the entire time. But I'm going to go take care of this voice, if you'll excuse me. My thanks again to Jorge Ramos, to Barbara Starr, and to the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. I'm going to go rest this voice. You have a good night, everybody. Take care. Good night.